Hey everyone, today we're looking at market-based supply-side policies, how they work to increase the potential output of an economy, and some examples of them at work. Okay, let's do it. So these are endorsed by free market economists like this guy, Milton Friedman, and they're about letting the market be a market, letting competition occur in the economy, reducing distortions that come from government intervention, where they stop it from being a market, letting the labour market be free. We'll see what these mean in a bit more detail later, and also letting incentives do their thing. So letting incentives drive people's behaviour and therefore drive the economy. We'll get into it. Firstly, privatisation. This is when a public enterprise enters into the private sector. So an example of this was when the South Australian government privatised its bus system. It used to be publicly run. The rationale behind this is to increase efficiency and competition due to the profit incentive. The private bus companies, they were able to make profits, where the state-owned system, they weren't able to make profits. So this incentivizes the private company to be as efficient as possible to maximize those profits that they can get. Also, the competition between different bus companies to win the right to certain routes, that incentivizes them to cut costs. They've got to give the best deal to the government in order to get the contract. So this increase in efficiency, of course, shifts the LRS to the right, while the lowered cost of production shift the SRS to the right as well. So this is all due to the profit incentive that we see. Okay, deregulation. In 2015, the Australian government slashed unnecessary regulations in environmental regulation alone. Cutting that, they saved the economy $440 million in compliance costs per year. So regulations, which are essentially the government rules which must be followed, they add costs to businesses because they need to employ resources to make sure they comply with the rules. So the deregulation here has simplified the process for environmental approvals, lowering the costs of production, which shifts SRS, and also these firms are now able to put their labour force to more productive uses than compliance. So actually increasing the amount that they are able to produce, the goods and services. So this shifts LRS over to the right. If we multiply this across the whole economy, what we get is an increase in the economy's potential. Okay, next, trade liberalisation. This is something that we're going to cover much more deeply later in the course, but in its most basic form, trade liberalisation is, stumbling over words, is about lowering tariffs, taxes on imports between two or more countries. So Australia has been negotiating a free trade agreement with the UK since the UK decided to leave the European Union. This agreement will lower tariffs on the goods that we export to the UK, such as beef, making our exports more attractive. This will increase X and therefore AD, like that. Now, this agreement would also make imports cheaper, meaning we buy more. Therefore, it's actually hard to tell what the overall effect on aggregate demand will be. But what we do know is that any firm that imports its factors of production from the UK will likely now be able to purchase them more cheaply. So this will lower their cost of production and shift SRS over to the right. In terms of potential output, opening up the economy to cheaper imports forces local producers to become more efficient and productive. Otherwise, they just won't survive in the face of the competition. This shifts LRS out to the right and increases the productive potential of the economy. Restricting monopoly power. We just saw how important competition is to encourage efficiency and productivity. This is why in Australia, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission has the power to stop firms merging so that those competitive forces remain. For example, it is highly unlikely that Coles and Woolworths would ever be allowed to merge. The government wants firms to compete and constantly strive for a competitive advantage over each other. This policy is, well, it's really interventionist when you think about our previous video, because it's less like a free market, but it tends to fit in here because stopping monopoly power to form actually increases our efficiency and productivity. So what we see is SRAS and LRS shifting to the right. Now, the ACCC also investigates other types of anti-competitive behaviour. So in the cutthroat world of the Australian cardboard box industry, it turned out that competition wasn't all that cutthroat. The two biggest companies, Amcor and Visy, conspired to not compete against each other, boosting their profits at the expenses of the box buying masses. Essentially, the rest of Australia, we all buy boxes, whether directly or indirectly. The ACCC were tipped off to this agreement to not compete, and they investigated, and $36 million worth of fines were issued. This deterrence now acts to keep that competition and efficiency going across the economy, leading to the same SRAS and LRS shifts to the right. Where are you going? Okay, businesses will often argue that increases in the minimum wage and even the minimum wage itself do great harm to the economy. The Australian minimum wage is set by the Fair Work Commission each year. Any increase that is less than the increase in the cost of living is essentially a decrease in the minimum wage in real terms. A decrease in the minimum wage can result in more employment, possibly reducing the natural rates of employment, shifting LRS to the right, like we can see has already happened here. It will also reduce costs for businesses, shifting SRS to the right because they don't have to pay their staff as much. These savings may allow more investment in capital, which might also increase the quantity and quality of resources, also shifting LRS to the right. Okay, reducing unemployment benefits. In 2020, after the initial panic, unemployment benefits were reduced from their temporary inflated level. So when it started, we boosted the unemployment benefits, and now we've dropped them back. So dropping unemployment benefits takes the economy more towards a free market where unemployment benefits just wouldn't exist. But how does this increase potential output in the economy? Well, the theory is that it changes the incentives of job seekers. If they have to subsist on a lower welfare payment, then surely their incentive to find a job increases. This should then reduce the natural rate of unemployment because people will find jobs quicker because they're a bit more desperate. And the greater supply of workers should also induce downward pressure on wages because workers are less scarce. And therefore that should shift SRS to the right also. Okay, union power. A labour union is more likely known as a trade union in Australia, so that term you might see that more often than labour union. Now, the main benefits to employees of being part of a union is the union's negotiation with the employer to improve wages and conditions. Conditions often include things like job security. I think the benefits of job security to employees are obvious, so let's look at the negative effects on an economy. Job security of workers imposes costs on productivity, as that security, it means that it's very expensive to remove them from the organisation. For example, at the University of Adelaide, it can cost up to 72 weeks of pay to remove someone from their position. That's a negotiated agreement between the union and the university. It is often hard to remove an underperforming employee unless they are really drastically underperforming. The university therefore finds it difficult to have the most productive employees possible in all their roles. So when this occurs economy-wide, that can be a significant drag on productivity. A lack of job security incentivizes employees to always be as productive as possible so they keep their job. What this would do is this would shift LRAS to the right and SRAS shifting with it. Cost of production would fall as the cost to remove staff are lessened. And in addition, if labour unions are effective at negotiating higher wages, then weakening these unions should result in lower wages over time. And we have seen the reduction in union membership over time has been pretty drastic. Okay, these ones are about incentives. So here, lowering income tax. So lowering income tax is all about increasing incentives for workers. This has been done recently here in Australia as Prime Minister Scott Morrison, or ScoMo, he promised a fair go for those who have a go. So as workers get to keep more of each additional dollar earned, it is more worthwhile to strive for a higher paying job to get that raise. Those working hard are who he's referring to as having a go. Let's have a look at how much the tax rates were indeed changed. So what we can see is that people started paying the 32.5% tax rate a little bit later. It was 37, now it's 45. But the big difference here is when people start paying the 37% tax rate. That income level has shifted by 30,000 from 90 to 120. This makes getting a higher paying job more worthwhile. That incentivizes people to be more productive, improve their skills, work smarter. If this is happening, the quality of resources increases and therefore LRAS shifts, like so, and the efficiency will, of course, lower the cost of production, increasing the SRAS at the same time, like so. Okay, reducing corporate tax. Finally, this was done by this man in 2018. So look at the size of this cut. Before his cut, 35% of taxes. 35% of profits went to tax, now only 21%. That's a massive difference. So if firms get to keep more of their profits, they're more likely to spend on investment in capital, which can increase the quantity and quality of resources in an economy, making labour more productive. This sees our now very familiar shift of LRAS to the right and the efficiency shifting the SRAS along with it, like so. Now, we'll look at some constraints. So we know that there is no such thing as a perfect policy. But what are some of the problems with market-based supply-side policies? Firstly, tax reductions. So we can see from the tax reductions that those on salaries above 90,000 per year are the bigger winners, which will likely increase income inequality. The reduction in corporate taxes will mean bigger profits for shareholders, and those people would tend to be in the wealthier sections of society. Now, the labour market policies that we mentioned will likely also have a larger effect on the poorer in society. Reduced minimum wage and reduced unemployment benefits will by definition affect the lowest income earners. And union members also don't tend to be among the richer level of society. Deregulation can have some issues too. We might assume that regulations were put in place for good reasons, to protect the environment, to protect worker safety. Yes, some of these may have reduced productivity, but to what extent do we trade off the environment and workers for productivity gains? Now, it would be nice to assume that governments operate only in the best interests of the people and the economy. However, it's not always the case. There are powerful lobby groups, often funded by big industries, that exert pressure on governments to act in their interests. Just think about how lower corporate taxes and deregulation can be very business friendly. Think of the incentives at play in some of these policies. The profit incentive. A privatized business, a business that is now open to increased domestic and international competition. With these policies, they've got an even greater incentive to cut costs where they can. In many cases, that'll be the workers. And generally, these are that long-term policies, these changes need time to materialize and have that desired effect on potential output. All right, we're going to go deeper into these in class, so make sure you've taken the notes that you need, and we'll get to it.